Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Cynthia Mulenga. I'll be your host for today's topic, which we are looking at leadership, a barrier or enabler, and whether agile leadership is the answer. With me, I have Nchimunya. I will allow her to actually introduce herself. Nchimunya.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. It's always a pleasure to have you and to share knowledge in the Agile ecosystem. I'm happy to join you today. And as Cynthia said earlier on, we're talking about Agile leadership today. And I'm going to start sharing my screen soon so that I can share what I have for you today. But I wouldn't go without saying and expressing gratitude to Bongo Hive, who have been making these events possible for us to share knowledge and educate about Agile, whether it's Agile leadership, whether it's Agile frameworks, and just the whole ecosystem. So I'm going to start sharing my screen soon, and then Cynthia can pick it up later.
Yeah.
So as I was preparing myself for this event, I sat down to think what leadership was all about and why leadership. I believe most of us have had time to reflect about the leaders that are leading us or about ourselves being leaders? Are we barriers or are we enablers in the environments that we're in? So today, I would like to share just an understanding of what leadership is all about, and to be specific, agile leadership. There have been so many theories, so many practices, so many principles about leadership. We have so many leaders from generations to generations. We have leaders like Mahatma Gandhi. We have leaders like Nelson Mandela. We have leaders like Eleanor Roosevelt. We have leaders like Frederick Taylor. And what are all these leadership practices and theories telling us today? As I get to think about how, about my background, I always thought leaders should be sitting in a boardroom, or leaders should be somebody leading a company, or somebody who's a high politician somewhere, or just somebody who's older than me, or somebody who's just doing something great. When I asked my 8-year-old daughter today, she herself at 8 would like to be a leader. She says she is a leader. And when she gives me that feedback, I always sit down and reflect on what leadership is all about. Is leadership about the people who are sitting in boardrooms, or is leadership about anybody who's able to motivate, to motivate another person, to inspire another person? And I believe today we are the leaders. All of us who are sitting in this room today, in this virtual room today, are leaders. And leaders are those that inspire others, make others dream more, and become more. I think for me, that's a description of a leader that really resonates with me. We all are leaders. As long as you can inspire somebody, you can teach somebody to learn something, or you can make other people to become more. Why are we talking about leadership in this day and age? I think this topic was something that really provoked my thoughts in terms of the result of the era that we're living in. How do we lead in the era that we're living in? So many organizations and companies and businesses are at a tipping point because of the era that we're living in. How do we move, or how do we manage to thrive, or how do we produce leaders who will be able to lead organizations in this 21st century? I'm sorry, my slide is not moving. Right. I'm sorry, I have to go back a little bit. So today, I would like to share about what Agile leadership is all about. What is Agile leadership in the era that we're living in? I think looking at agility, we have to, change is inevitable, and we have to move with the times that we're living in. If you're rigid about changing, if you don't change, your business will die. If you don't change, your whole empire will die, because these times that we're living in, everybody has got to a tipping point, and we have to change the way we're leading our organizations, the way we're leading our personal lives, the way we're leading and inspiring the many generations to come. If I just wanted to say, if anybody has anything to contribute or to share, please share it in the chat box, and we will get to a point where we will respond. And I would like this to be a conversation, because all of us are leaders. We are being led by other people, or we are leaders ourselves. So what is Agile leadership? I think from the onset, Agile leadership begins with a new mindset. And that new mindset has to begin from ourselves. Like Mandela said, he could not change others before he changed himself. And I believe when we change ourselves, we will be able to change others. And that's how Agile leadership works. The first thing that I would like to talk about is tapping from your natural self, being authentic about the purpose that you're serving as a leader. I, for one, I think when you're serving because you've been asked to do something, you will not do it with a passion. You will not do it because it's coming from the heart. You will do it because you've been delegated to, or you're doing it because you have a paycheck waiting for you sitting somewhere, or you will do it because you are in that job. But the thing that I would like us to focus on today is tapping from our authentic self. When you tap from your authentic self, I think leadership is more important and meaningful, because you will work beyond that paycheck. You will work beyond your own personal values. You will put others first. And leadership is all about, it's about you, and it's not about you. It's about you in the sense that you need to be the role model. You need to change your mindset. And that begins by creating a foundation of who you are. In Agile leadership, it's always important to note that there's always a place for not knowing. And that's what I enjoy the most. When I was growing up, I always thought, when I say something wrong, people are going to judge me. People are going to think I don't know what I'm talking about, or people will think otherwise of what I'm saying. But as I grew older and got into the Agile space, I realized that being in a place of not knowing is okay. And as leaders, I think it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to walk up to a colleague and say, would you like to show me how to go about this as a leader? In the traditional space, because of the hierarchies that have been put in the traditional space, it's difficult for people to walk up to a junior and say, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you show me what it is? But in the Agile space, that's the way to go. If you don't know, it's okay. The Agile space is all about learning and relearning and having that continuous aspiration of learning from different aspects of your goal. And what is Agile leadership in terms of building others? Like I said earlier on, leadership is about you and not about you. And when it comes to building others, Agile leadership is all about building others. The people around you are the most important people. You are there to inspire others. You are there to be a mentor. You are there to be a teacher. You as a leader is there to empathize with the people that are in your team, to build others. And when it comes to building others, it's not only about you giving, it's about a mutual understanding, getting back from the people that you're building as well, taking interest in the people that you're leading. How do you sit down and find out what is happening to a colleague or to a team member? And I believe happy teams make happy customers. So when you start as a leader to build others, you will create highly effective teams that are happy and are ready to serve beyond themselves, to serve beyond, to serve the customer and create revenue in return. Another thing that I wanted to touch on is creating value. In the Agile leadership space, value is a very key and important thing to note. As a leader, when you lead, you are creating value, not only for yourself, but for the whole team and the whole organization at large. And the way we do, the way you create value is prioritize. How do you prioritize important things? Work on important things, or work on things that will create value for the organization first and create that value. Other things that you can note about being in the Agile leadership is to create safe spaces. As a leader, how do you want the environment that you're in to be? Because you are a reflection of the environment, of the things that are happening around you. So when you create those safe spaces in terms of your team members can walk up to you and share whatever it is that they want to share, and you should not judge them. Your team members may not know something about the project that you're working on, and you as a leader has to create that multidisciplinary environment. People can learn from one another. Another important thing that I wanted to share is, as a leader, as an Agile leader, how do you ignite passion in other people? So when you have that new mindset of creating all these things that I have talked about, you are creating an Agile environment, you're creating a leader, or you're creating leaders that will be able to sustain the organization not only for today, but for tomorrow as well. Another thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to Agile leadership is creating innovation or fostering innovation. As a leader, how do you foster innovation? In the traditional model, I think it's always about, when it comes to communication, it's always about the destination of the communication. If it's coming from up there, the destination is always to the bottom in the pyramid, in the leadership pyramid. But in the Agile space, direction doesn't matter. Communication direction is more important than the destination. So in the Agile space, communication is from any direction, because great ideas come from different minds. So communication direction in the Agile space comes from anywhere. How do we create a space of knowing your customers? As a leader, how do you know the people that you're creating the value for? We have models like customer journey mapping. How do you learn your customers? Do you learn your customers after your products have been created? Or do you learn your customers before you create your products? Because I think it's important to interact with your customers from the onset. When you know your customers as a leader, you'll be able to create teams, you'll be able to foster teams that will create innovative products that will have that customer in mind. By doing that, you can also encourage collaboration as a leader. Are we leaders of, oh, I know it all, so I cannot share it to the other people, or my team knows everything and they cannot share it with the next team? How do we create value by collaborating with other teams, collaborating with, or just co-creating? How do we create such spaces? Collaboration is one of the very important things as a leader in the Agile space. We also have to know that as leaders, we have to experiment, especially in this era that we're living in. How are we going to create teams or organizations that are going to thrive? We are going to do this by experimenting. How do we use the evidence that we have gained to create a better place, or to create revenue for our businesses or for our organizations? And as leaders, we need to emphasize that we need to work in the empirical way, in that work, experiment. You can experiment in small teams, you can experiment in small systems, create a system, pick a system, and experiment and use those results to create a better place, or to avoid risk in the different businesses that we are doing. Another thing that I can talk about when it comes to when it comes to fostering innovation is that we have processes and tools that we use in our organization. How do we foster innovation? How do we encourage our teams to use technology? Or how do we encourage our teams to be creative? So we have to create that space of let people be creative, let people be free to experiment and to give us results and to work on those results based on what we're experimenting on. How do we shape an agile culture as leaders? I think that's a very important question. From my own experience, I have been moving from different places and staying among different people. And one thing that really sits, and it's right at the core of my being, is interacting with different cultures. I think one important thing that we need to do as leaders is understand the cultures that we are working in. What is the culture that your organization has? Do we know the culture that we are working in? I've worked, or I've come across people who when they get an offer letter, or they're looking for a job, they dig into finding out what the organization culture is all about. Do we know the cultures that we're working in? Do we know the cultures that we're building as leaders in the different environments that we're working in? I think that's very critical, because culture is very, very important. How do we shape an agile culture? We have to have a revolution of agility, because change is inevitable. Change is in every space. It doesn't matter right now, it doesn't matter which field you're in, it doesn't matter what business you're in, and change is inevitable. But how are we going to create spaces to thrive as leaders? As I had alluded earlier on, we have to create organizations that are customer centric, putting the customer as the first and key thing we need to deal with. Putting a smile on that customer. How do we do that? In the agile space, I think being customer-centric is very key, because you will not be agile if you don't deal with your customers first. You will not be agile if you don't get feedback, you don't create those feedback loops using those experiments that I was talking about earlier on. We need to create the feedback loops so that we can create value for the customer, and we can create value for the people that we're working for, because agility is all about the customer. How are we responding to the needs of the customer? Or how are we responding to the needs of the environment, the markets that we're working in? It's not only the customer, the environment, the regulation. How are we responding to the regulations that are being that are passed in our industry? So we have to have that agile culture and re-envision the way we are doing things. One thing that is key as an agile leader is to have that North Star, having that collective goal. That North Star will guide you through the strategic levels, through making decisions, the right decisions, through avoiding risks. And having that North Star is very critical. When you have that North Star, you also need to understand that who are you doing this for? And you also need to sit down and analyze, this is the direction that we want to go, but who are we doing it for? And how are we going to do it? The most important thing of how, especially the how to achieve that North Star or getting to the North Star, is asking simple but yet pertinent questions. It could be among our teams, we could go to any of our team members and ask very simple questions. But those questions will build on whatever goal that you have, whatever North Star you want to get to. So we have to have that North Star. That North Star will give us guidance. That North Star will be able to we will be able to ask the important questions that will yield to creating value for the organization. Another important thing that is part of the Agile revolution is the people that are around us. And like I said earlier on, agility is all about, or being a leader rather, is all about the people around us. It starts from the change within you, and then you decide to change the people around you. But how do you change the people around you? You have to be a role model as a leader. You have to take interest in the teams and empower the different teams that we're working with. I would like to pose a question to the audience for those that are working in teams. How often do you take interest in empowering your team members? As team members are empowered, you will find that you will not micromanage them, because they have their autonomy. They have the skills that they need to do their job, and they know what time it is. Once you give them that empowerment, you'll be able to create teams that are highly effective, and as usual, create value for the organization. When we build our teams as leaders, it is always important to look at, are we do we have the right people on our buses? Do we have the right people on our teams? And it's okay to create spaces. If you think the people around you are not right, it's okay to create spaces for those people to thrive in another place. Imagine every time you have a team member that comes, and when things are supposed to be moving ahead, because of that one team member, things have moved 10 steps backwards. It's okay to create a space for that team member to thrive in a space, in another space. You can move that team member to another space. But how do we do that without making them feel bad or making them feel, am I not worthy of being a part of this team? One way of doing that is to take interest in them, find out what their passion is, find out how they envision the North Star, find out if they understand how the organization works. And from there, you can ask simple questions. You can build on moving that team member to a place where they will thrive. I believe in the traditional model, we have a lot of restructuring and laying off of people because their roles are deemed irrelevant. In the agile space, we create environments for people to thrive. So when we're building our teams, if we don't have the right people, we can create spaces for them to thrive. But it's always important to create an environment where bring the right people on board and you will see great results. The different teams that we have, how do we make sure that the team members, as a leader, how do you make sure your team members are empowered? How do you make sure your team members have that continuous learning? How do you continue to make sure that your teams are skilled? And all that has a space as an agile leader. It is important to empower your team members. It is important to create that space of continuous learning. And learning cannot only be getting training or going for workshops or things like that. Creating continuous learning environment can be within the teams. Because you have empowered teams, you have multidisciplinary discipline teams, multidisciplinary teams. You will have people that have knowledge, that have different sets of knowledge, and team members can learn from one another. And that's the whole essence of agility. How do we empower the different team members to learn from one another? I think in the traditional, I've had an experience of talking to leaders who are not too sure if they want to give the team members that autonomy. But looking at the era that we're living in now, we cannot have decision makers waiting for that one person who has gone on vacation or that one person who's on sick leave and they cannot make decisions. We need to create, as leaders, we need to create environments where team members have the autonomy to do their work and team members know exactly what time it is. When team members have the autonomy and they're empowered, you will see great value. You don't want to have team members that are always waiting on you. You don't want to micromanage people. Then you're not being a good leader. There's never been a perfect leader, but we can all thrive to be good leaders. We also have to look at an empowering culture. How do we create that empowering culture for our teams as leaders? It has to begin within ourselves. It has to begin by creating change and knowing who we are. And it only doesn't remain with the teams. As leaders, as agile leaders, we can transform organizations. And how do we do that? We can align the North Star with the strategic goals of the whole organization. When we create those goals that we want as leaders for our teams, how do we have to align them with the goals, the strategic goals of the whole organization. We also have to be role models to the people that we're trying to change. If we are not role models, it'll be very difficult to create that smooth transition into an agile enterprise. I know I have had experience of people saying there are people that don't want to hear the agile word. There are people who don't want to hear change. From my experience, I think I remember now when I sit and reflect back, I have seen rigidity in terms of transformation. And that is difficult as a leader. And if people don't see the change in you, it'll be difficult for you to implement to make them change. Or not only change, but to move with the times that we're living in. We have to have that revolution of the way we do things. We have to have that revolution of the mindset. Because if we don't revolutionize our mindset, we will not be able to thrive. We also have to build models for the organization that work. When we implement change, or when we want to implement agile transformations, we cannot do it in a drastic way. Otherwise, we will get resistance. We can start small, build small, experiment small, and use those results to build the whole organization. How do we also make sure the organization is transformed? By fostering the agile practices and principles. Being an agile organization is not all about using agility as a silver bullet. There are different frameworks that can work. There are different principles that we can use. And at the end of the day, we have to find frameworks that are befitting for our organization, frameworks that will not cause any resistance from the people that we're trying to, or processes that we're trying to implement for our teams. We also have to make sure we have the right skills, the right roles. People understand the different roles. As leaders, how do we help people thrive in their different roles? We have to make sure all the goals of the different teams, starting from a personal level, team level, align with the goals or the strategic goals of the different of our organization. We also have to change our mindset. I think agility is all about the mindset. And once we change ourselves, we will be able to change others. And I would like to hear from the audience if there are any people who, what environment are we working in as leaders? We ourselves are leaders, and we need to thrive to work at inspiring others. We need to thrive at learning from others. We need to thrive to have that grit, that resilience of the era that we're working in, or the era that we're living in. How do we stay relevant as leaders? How do we make sure our teams feel happy in the times that we're living in the times of remote working? How do we make sure our teams have the right tools and processes to use so that we can still have that highly productive level? I think as leaders, we need to start with the change from within, and we will be able to achieve that agile culture and that agile leadership that we are looking for. I think I'm going to end here. If any of you have any questions, any contributions, I would be happy to take them. And over to you, Cynthia.
Thank you very much, Nchimunya. Thank you for your presentation. I like how, I think for me, mostly what has stood up for me, it's not all about, it's about me. At the same time, it's not all about me. And I think in my past, before I remember we met when I was trying to get certified in Scrum, which is also part of Agile. And I think at some point I would mistake leadership for just it being about me, and not realizing that it is also about building other people and making sure that other people are also happy with the working environment that we have. The culture is fitting as well, and making sure that we're also being customer centric in all the processes and tools that we are coming up with or setting up in our organization. So thank you very much for that presentation. It has put in a lot of things in perspective. Before I go on, I'll just like to welcome everyone once again. So if you're joining us through Zoom, you can use the Q&A section to post your questions, which we'll get into answering. If you are joining us via Facebook, you can actually put in your comments and we'll be able to read some of the comments and the questions that you put up there. If it's other platforms that you're joining through, if it's YouTube, you can also put in the comments, and if it's a question, we shall try to answer it as much as possible. So I actually have a question for you, Nchimunya, which is coming from Joanna. So Joanna, I'll have to read it. Joanna asks, saying, I'm having to assist an organization to get rid of the dead wood. What do you suggest should my focus be? I want to go the route that you are suggesting with continuous learning. It is a hopeless case. People in the same, that I think she's trying to say, there are people in the organization that have been on the same position for the past 20 years, and they still cannot understand the dynamic of driving change, accept it for themselves as well. A few have come on board by using the internet tools we have become used to. Would it be, I would like, I presume it was supposed to be, I would like your view on this. So this is a scenario where Joanna is helping an organization remove the dead wood or make sure the members of staff they have are fitting into the culture they're trying to build.
Like I said, Joanna, you have to experiment and you have to start small. If we want to do a radical change, we will definitely get into blockers. When you start small, pick a number of people that you can, the people that you have identified as wanting to change. Pick those few and experiment from those few. And when the rest see the change in those few, I believe you'll be able to implement the change in those that are being resistant. If not, like I said, it's okay to find another bus for them where they'll go and thrive, because they will deter you. They will try and move the pin from pointing to the North Star, and they'll keep derailing you. So if the resistance is so much, it's okay to let them thrive in another place. But start with experimenting small. Pick the people, identify the people, and pick the people that are ready to change. And once the others see the change, they will definitely come on board. And what you have to do is you have to make sure the people that you pick succeed. And when the other people see the success, they will definitely follow suit and they'll be able to change.
Thank you, Nchimunya. So the questions are rolling in. I like this. So you have another question from Sylvia. So Sylvia asks, how does one deal with a leader that has no interest in empowering the people below or even building them?
How does one deal with a leader who doesn't want to build? That is a hard one, Sylvia. But the beauty about agility, like I said, communication is in any direction. So communication cannot start, it can start from the top, trickling down, or it can start from the bottom, trickling up. And one thing that needs to happen is create an environment as yourself, because you are the leader, Sylvia. It should start within you. Empower yourself. Once you empower yourself, you can trickle the empowerment to the team members. And maybe the leader will change. If the leader doesn't change, like I said earlier on, there's been so many leaders. There are so many types of leaders that we can encounter. Bureaucratic, democratic, 7 leaders. But if you have that kind of leader, you have to find a way of communicating to that person so that that person can see your drive. That person can see that in this era, we cannot hold on to the old ways of doing things. Otherwise, we will die. Our companies will not survive. Our businesses will not survive. We have to move to the new way of doing things. And so many things are changing. Regulation, customer needs. Almost everybody now is moving to being online or using some form of electronic way of communicating, or some form of electronic way of doing business. So you have to find a way of communicating to that leader to show them that times are changing, and you need to have that grit for you to survive. We can move to the next question, Cynthia.
Okay, so before we go to the next one, we have a comment from Facebook by Mutare, who says, thank you so much, Nchimunya. I had an online course on Agile Leadership, but still didn't see how it quite fits into my day-to-day interactions. This workshop has made it very clear. Yeah, I think I do understand that part. When I did my certification as well, it took a while to sort of connect how it all fits into what you're doing in terms of your work. Then Joanna, who asked your first question, says, I love that advice. Thank you. It sounds appropriate. It is unfortunate. I think the organization that Joanna is dealing with is parastatal, and letting go is not as easy.
I think the other thing, Cynthia, I would like to share with Joanna is that she can start small. She can experiment with, like I said, with maybe a few team members. And once people see that change, they will definitely come on board.
That is so true.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if we have any other questions, but I had a few of my own. Okay, we have Alan. Sorry, let me take maybe the one from Alan. Alan says, thank you, Nchimunya, for the enlightening presentation. Kindly briefly elaborate what evidence-based management is all about.
So evidence-based management is all about working on experiments. When you have a business and you are not too sure what direction the business is going, you're in a complex environment. Evidence-based through the experiment will improve the customer outcomes by having those feedback loops. When you experiment, you get feedback from the customer. When you experiment, you get feedback from stakeholders. When you experiment, you get feedback from the people around the environment that you're working in. You will use that feedback to avoid risk or to create products that are valuable to the customer. So by using evidence, you just use the results from the experiments that you're creating. They should be small experiments, frequent experiments, and use that loop to feed back into the system. That's what evidence-based management is all about. And I think one other thing I would talk about evidence-based is to you examine value in terms of things that you have not realized yet. You examine value based on your current status. You examine value based on how quick it'll be for you to market your product. You also examine your tools to innovate. So evidence-based, you use those 4 aspects and you'll be able to create experiments and create value at the end of the day.
Thank you, Nchimunya. So another question, this one is from me. When you were doing your presentation, you talked about how, an organization is already set up, they've done the hiring process, and how as an agile leader, you'd have to know the interests of your team members, trying to see their strengths and then see how best then you can move them around the organization to see more value coming out of them and building a more happier team. My question is, if I am just starting out, it's a startup and we're hiring, what are the strategies that one would have to look into in terms of making sure that even as they are hiring people that will fit in properly in their organizational culture, and they'll build a team that indeed will bring true value in terms of when they look at the customer.
So as you're hiring as a startup, you have set out your goals, you have set out the values of the organization, you have set out the principles that you want your team members to follow. When you're hiring, you have to look for people who align with those values, principles, practices, and the culture that you have as a startup. I think those are very key to begin with. Once you start your business, you have to have value. What are your values, brother? What are your values? What are your principles? What is the anchor, your North Star? What is the thing that is binding you together to attain that goal? So when hiring people, you have to hire people that align with your principles, with your values, so that you will not have people who are just looking for a paycheck. You have people who are looking beyond the paycheck. You have people who are looking to add value to what you're building. You have people that will be there with you no matter what. They look beyond themselves. And that's what Agile leadership and the hiring process is about.
Thank you very much, Nchimunya. I think that is helpful. I don't know if there are any other questions. Oh, okay. So there's another one. This one is from Richard, and Richard says, what if you are under the leadership of a non-agile leader? How can you help the leader in such a case? This is coming from LinkedIn. So what if you are under the leadership of a non-agile leader? How can you help the leader in such a case?
I think earlier on I alluded that there's so many kinds of leaders of today. There could be bureaucratic, there could be strategic leaders, there could be transactional leaders, and so forth. And for you to change the leader, like I said, or to deal with the leader that is not in the agile, that doesn't have that agile mindset, you have to start with yourself. Have that agile mindset. Create that agile mindset for yourself first. And then you'll be able to transform the other people into having that mindset as well. So it has to start with you, Richard. You have to have that agile mindset. You have to have that zeal to want to move with the time, zeal to want to change, to want to be flexible, to allow teams to be empowered, to allow teams to have that flexibility to work on their own terms as long as they're producing value. Once you do that, or once you search within yourself and you understand yourself, you create that platform of understanding yourself before you deal with others, then you'll be able to deal with the person who's not in the agile space. It has to start with you, Richard, and then eventually you can communicate to the leader that is not in the agile space once you understand where you're at as an agile leader, and then you'll be able to communicate to the people that are not in the space.
Thank you, Nchimunya. As I wait to see another question, I'd like to pose one. So part of being agile, I know it's about adapting to change. So you constantly doing also experiments, and if you find there are changes that need to be made, you look at that and you adapt accordingly. Is there any advice you'd give someone who is asking, how do I then make sure that I am constantly keeping up with the change and adapting constantly, and I'm not slacking behind?
So in the agile space, we work in small cycles, and that creates an environment for you to adapt quickly or to fail quickly and learn quickly. So once you have that you are in that experiment mode of working in small cycles, you'll be able to get results to see if what you're working on is going in the right direction. From those experiments, those small experiments, if things are not going in the right direction, the direction that you want to go, you'll be able to notice quickly and be able to align and pivot quickly into the right direction. So by doing things in small cycles, experimenting in small cycles, you'll be able to learn quickly and be able to adapt quickly in the direction that you want to go.
Thank you very much, Nchimunya. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I guess I can build off what you've just said. So you've talked about how you do you use smaller iterations, and I'm assuming, like, for me who's done Scrum, for me that speaks into sprints and doing all the Scrum ceremonies that have to do with sprints. That is the stand-ups, the retrospectives, the sprint reviews. If this is an organization that is saying we've never even tried Scrum, like where do I mean, sorry, Agile in, like, just in general Agile, where do we start from? Are there like courses that we have to maybe enroll our members of staff into? Because we've also talked about continuous learning. Should we put that as their continuous learning, or are there any other tools that we should look into? What courses would you advise such an organization to look into?
So for the people that want to get into the Agile space, there are courses that you can do. You can, for the different roles as well, there are different roles that people need to have in order to be an Agile organization and to implement that Agile transition successfully. So you can train to be Scrum Masters, and there's a lot of certifications around that area. You can train to be product owners. There are a lot of certifications around product owners. You can train to be Agile leaders, for you to really understand and delve into the aspect of being a servant leader, being that leader that you want to see in others. You can get the Agile leadership certification. And for you to get the organization to have that Agile culture, to have that continuous learning or that continuous practice in agility, you can train to be get certified to be Agile coaches. And the Agile coaches will make sure that everybody in the organization is aligned and they're practicing agility in its holistic and rightful manner. So there are all sorts of certifications. You can certify with scrum.org, or you can certify with Scrum Alliance. You can also certify with IC Agile. And for one, I would say the Agile space has been one that has made me thrive. I think I have found a place where I enjoy the learning of it's not only in one aspect, but there's so many aspects that you can learn from. And it's always important to understand how the different roles interact in the Agile space. There are different roles, and it's always important to understand how the different roles complement each other. How, for instance, you cannot have, it'll be difficult to have a Scrum Master playing the same person playing the role of Scrum Master and Product Owner, because those are two different roles. So it's always important to get to know what the different roles are all about, get certified, and different organizations provide different ways of certification. So different organizations or team members can get certified and have those agility skills for you to understand agility in its holistic way. I think I see another question.
Okay, so the other question is coming from Chilufia. Chilufia says, great question, Cynthia. Was thinking of the question of the leader that is not ready and how they might get to speed. The essence of orientation becomes critical.
You know, Cynthia, one thing that I think is key to not, as an Agile leader, I have learned to listen more.
Yeah.
It's a very, very key attribute to have, or capability to have. And it's important to harness all these capabilities to manage the organizations of these organizations that we work for, or that we're trying to build in the 21st century. Listening is a key attribute of an agile leader. When you listen more, you'll be able to give feedback that is relevant, give produce outcomes that are relevant to the different ecosystems that we're working in.
That is really true. Listening is really important. Sorry, Nchimunya, could you just quickly say the places one can get the certifications again? I want to just type in the URLs. I've typed in for the scrum.org. I've typed in for the Scrum Alliance. Which other two did you mention so that our participants can just look at them later?
I said I see Agile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if any other question. Sylvia says, learning a lot. Thank you very much, Nchimunya.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, I think for the other links, we'll try and circulate them in the comments for the videos, whether you are joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. I think we'll put in a proper in the comments. We'll put in a proper outline for the different URLs. So far, Bonnie sent for scrum.org and Scrum Alliance, and the others will add them on after this transmission or workshop. I think we on Facebook and LinkedIn, we seem to have covered all the questions, and here on Zoom, I cannot see any.
Interesting.
Okay.
Just to bring down, Cynthia, the big question that I had is, are we as leaders being enablers, or are we being barriers? And is agility the answer to?
Well, if I may answer that question from my own experience, being led and being a leader at the same time, I think the traditional way of leadership, I think as we are evolving over time and the working environments are changing in terms of even the demand and the culture around it, when you stick to the old traditional way of leadership, I think they do become a hurdle and a blocker, in that, especially in organizations where they're very strict with the hierarchy, even in terms of getting suggestions or any opinions in terms of how you improve as an organization, it's a bit difficult, because you find there's a lot of protocols you have to go through, and a lot of stages that particular suggestion might go through. And just depending on your title, if you're right at the bottom of the hierarchy, it might not actually be heard.
Right.
But with Agile, because we're talking about collaboration and co-creation, it's not just about the leaders making the final decisions. Well, they'll still have the final say, but at least there's some openness in allowing also the people that are supposedly at the bottom of the hierarchy to also air out their views, give out suggestions, and be able to learn more and sort of also dive into other areas, as opposed to just being restricted to the set of tasks or your boundary in which you have to work in. So I think Agile, for me personally, Agile leadership is the answer to it all. I have worked in organizations where I have Agile leaders, and it has quite helped me in learning, also in just growing as a person, being productive at my work, and being happy, looking forward to 8 a.m. because I know I have a good team that I'm working with and good leaders that are willing to hear if I have a suggestion or any opinion, or I feel maybe we should try out something. So, and I like the experiment bit. I'm one person who like experimenting and finding out other ways of doing one particular thing. So that is my opinion, really.
Everybody remember, leadership is not about you, but it's also about you. Right.
Yes. Okay, I think we have a question.
Okay.
Oh, so Esnat says it's not a question. I thought it was a question, but they've openly said not a question. But just to say that this has been an amazing session, and I have learned much for my leadership journey.
Thank you. I'm glad you have.
I think Esnat is the one who mentioned doing something in Agile, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you very much, Esnat.
Yeah, I think that's it from me today.
Okay, then Susie also says, great session indeed. Thanks, Nchimunya.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess if there are no other questions, well, I have one last question for you, Nchimunya, actually. So, I haven't been certified for a long time. I'm still on Professional Scrum Master 1, yet to do Professional Scrum Master 2. And I think some of the things that I'm still trying to get a hold of is how to make sure that I'm helping the organization as a Scrum Master in terms of creating the safe environment. Because I think many organizations, you hear their employees feel maybe the environment is not safe enough to air out their opinions or suggestions because maybe they think they might offend, and the leader will think, oh, you're going against my,
Over.
authority and stuff like that. So how does one ensure that when they're creating the safe environment, they're creating it in such a way that it will cater for people coming from different backgrounds, different cultures?
You have to be observant and learn the different people that you're dealing with. As a leader, you have to be empathetic. You have to be observant. You have to be a teacher. You have to be a mentor as an agile leader. So once you embody those capabilities, you will be able to teach people. You'll be able to mentor people. So it should not be like the way we have a workshop and you have to go and do a presentation and all that. It could be over a water machine. Talk to people, air out your views, share your learnings from what you have learned as an agile leader. Share your experiences as an agile leader. Experiment as an agile leader. And once you do that, you will be able to create characters, build people in that space of being agile. So it doesn't have to be in a formal setting. And that's the beauty about agility. It doesn't have to be in a formal setting. It can be in a cafeteria. You're having lunch. You can ask the simple questions and yet pertinent questions. Ask what they think about agility, what they think about the era that we're living in, and how are people going to thrive? How are we going to survive? Because times have changed. So through those conversations, you will be able to see the direction that everybody is going. Through those conversations, you will be able to see if people are aligned with the overall organization strategy. And once you are able to observe and learn from the different conversations that you're having, you will be able to find direction of how to implement agility, starting on a small scale. And as people get to understand, you will be able to see that people will start envisioning and practicing the different frameworks that they get to learn of. but it's always important to have those conversations, be it on a coffee machine, you're making coffee, or during lunch, and so forth. So it doesn't have to be formal. You can do it whichever way.
Thank you, Nchimunya. Joanne, sorry. I read so many from Joanna. I read Joanna. So Joanne says that I totally agree. There is so much one can learn from an agile leader. Then goes on to say, building character is one thing that I would like to do as a leader. Any advice on how one builds character, especially with a team that has sort of lost motivation and enthusiasm on the job?
So when I say building others, as a leader, you should strive to build leaders of tomorrow. So when you build others around you and get them prepared for the change and adapt to the change that is going around your environment, you're building leaders of tomorrow. You're building character in those people. When you micromanage people, you're taking away from their creativity. You're taking away from them feeling they're capable of doing what they're supposed to do. So it's important to leave the teams to do what they need to do. And sometimes it's important to let people fail. If the fail is not going to cause drastic damage, it's okay to let people fail. So do not micromanage, let people learn, but build your own character first before you build others. Such that whatever it is that when you try to implement whatever you're implementing onto their team, onto the different team members, they will also see it in you. And you'll be able to build people of a good character and people not only who are looking, who have a vision of today, but you're looking at people who have a vision for tomorrow and the future.
Thank you, Nchimunya. Okay, we have a comment from Barbara saying great session. Please, is there a recording to this and how? Okay, so Barbara, we will for those of you who registered using the Zoom link, I think the recording will be shared after we are done with the session. On Facebook, you will still be able to access it there because we're doing a live video, so you'll be able to access it through the Bongo Hive page. Even on LinkedIn, I think you will be able to access the video later on as well. Yeah, I don't think we have any other questions, and I don't see any other comments, and we have we have 11 more minutes. So maybe what I could ask is Nchimunya, for you to just give us some closing remarks and any last advice you can give us, especially some of us who are in Zambia, speaking from experience where we are still really trying to advocate for being agile and agile leaders and just an agile workspace. Over to you, Nchimunya.
So, words of advice is continued learning. We are lucky that Bongo Hive has given us a space to share our agility journeys. Bongo Hive has given us the voice to the voiceless, those that want to be in the agile space and they don't know where to go. I was in that space, and as I got to interact with more people in the agile space, I have grown myself. I have continued learning, and it's always important to share the knowledge that you're getting. And sharing is caring. So we have to keep sharing, we have to keep learning, and we have to keep building those communities into agile communities. We have to build those people that we're leading into leaders of tomorrow, and so that they can become agile leaders. And overall, they can see that our organizations, the organizations that they're building, have that smooth transition into agility. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Nchimunya, and thank you very much for everyone that has participated in this workshop. If there'll be any in this series for agility, we look out for the Bongo. So on LinkedIn, look out on the Bongo Hive page, even on Facebook as well, and also their website, that is Bongo Hive's website, and you'll be able to see any upcoming workshops that will be undertaken in this regard. And thank you very much. Hope we'll see more organizations and more leaders being agile and preaching agility in the working environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Mama.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you, Nchimunya.